I'm not the first nor the last. I'm just telling you how it is. I sit in my own shadow now. The face of the people grows dim. The old songs still play. Hand to my chin. I dream of nothing. While my childhood leaps like a dolphin in frozen sea.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to introduce the topic, which is, I think, very interesting for us from the dramaturgy department or ex-dramaturgy department at the Academy of Drama Art, where also Tena, Mario, and Vedrana got their diplomas before becoming famous and independent in any way. So it's the dramaturgy of disappearing, the provisionary title that I gave. So I'll give a short intro into three participants of tonight, which is Maria Kovača. Of course, he's a prominent Croatian theater and movie director, and also known as multi-talented entertainer, TV program maker, musician, and DJ. Yes, that as well. An activist for numerous causes on the left and green political spectrum. As a part of ATTAC's performing arts team and front of alternative theater outbursts with intention, he had the intention to promote, distribute, and help independent theater groups, mostly those who deal with street, student, low budget, or alternative theater. Of course, he has made a lot of he has considerable great knowledge in theater with people with disabilities, and he had made his PhD in that topic as well. And he directed many plays and got some awards at major festivals. Second participant is Tena Štivičić. Tena Štivičić we know as a playwright, screenwriter, also as a columnist. And we also remember very, very well that Tena got the Susan Smith Blackburn Award, one of the greatest awards that one could be awarded these days. Her award-winning plays include Three Winters, Fragile, Can't Escape Sundays, Two of Us, Fireflies, and Invisible, Two of Us. And well, her biography is a very, very elaborate biography. I would say that I'm very proud that I was her, I wouldn't say teacher, I was one of her mentors at the Academy of Drama Art. And Vedrana Klepica as well. She works as a playwright and director. Her plays have been performed in Croatia, Great Britain, Germany, Luxembourg, France, also in Serbia, Austria. And she has been translated in different languages. And the last thing she prepares for us here in Zagreb is Kainberg, a place that is disappearing in the author's project of Vedrana. It's a theatrical dystopia, and I'm really looking forward to see it. So now it's time that we start with your little exposés on how do you feel right now in this pandemic, not yet post-pandemic, but still unfortunately pandemic situation. So I start this time with Vedrana. Vedrana is already on the big screen. So Vedrana, what about your new project? What about Dramaturgy of Disappearing? How do you feel now?
Well, first of all, I feel very tired because we have been doing this show for the last almost 3 months. We started doing it in September. Unfortunately, we had to change dates because we are an independent production, so I don't have an ensemble, like an actors ensemble. So basically, my actors are from different theaters, and my team who's working with me it's also freelancers that have their own schedules. So every time we actually change the schedule a bit because four of our team members have already got corona, so we had to postpone and we had to all go into isolation twice. It's frustrating because you really like after 3 months. I hope we're premiering on Tuesday. I really don't know at this point, but it's very strange and it's very frustrating because you don't really see the end. Like anything can shift all the time, and we're now working at Teatr Exit, and they're switching around their role to accommodate us also. So like I just like a week ago I was also on a Zoom conference with Onda. I'm really bad or like don't speak French at all. It's Office National of Dramatic Arts of France, and we've been just talking about this idea of encounter in theater, and for like what has changed in this virtual space that we're working on. And I wrote this piece, and maybe later I can just I don't have a lot of time, so I just wrote it really quickly. But my feelings for all of this is I really hate it, and I'm not sure that this type of virtual communication that we're trying to work through now is really the best thing for democracy anyway, because everything that was and everything that was trying to penetrate our society, our institutions, is now backing off because there's no finances and culture for radical things and subversive things, and it's only really the institutions that are trying to survive now. So this is a big problem, and I don't think these I think there's one good thing, which I really love theater, and it's my favorite medium of communication. But at the same time, I really believe that theater is such a old school bourgeois thing, the way it's still done today, because it's done through all of these really old institutions, and it's somebody in those institutions who is curating the program we see. So basically, even this type of communication, it's not bilateral. It's a one-way street. So now, when all these institutions are closed, where is actually the possibility for subversion? And is it really on the internet? Because I don't think so. And what we have seen in this crisis, and I think any crisis, it can be an economic crisis, it can be a health crisis, and it can be anything, it just amplifies this really undemocratic society full of class differences that are always present, but they're basically brought to absurdity in these times. So we never have representation that we have to have in a healthy society. We don't have class representation that matter. We don't have gender representation. We don't have minority representation. And in this situation, we have even less. And I'm mad about, I mean, everybody is mad, but the system really isn't working. The system is just protecting the institutions now. And that's a big problem. And we have, I know the artists have been writing letters and protesting as much as they could here in Croatia, but nothing is really changing at the moment, and everybody is kind of overworked. And I think we're just really thinking things through now and seeing where time will lead us at this point. Yeah.
I very much agree with you. I didn't want to talk live angrily, so I recorded my video, and I'm going to to show it to you later. But now here is Tena. Tena is right now in Edinburgh, I think.
Glasgow.
Am I right? Glasgow, sorry.
Yeah.
So how are you, Tena? What are your projects, plans?
I mean, I don't know, I think everything is relative at the moment. You have to keep having this sort of pep talk with yourself every day, you know, listing things that are okay and listing things that you feel sort of lucky about, because otherwise it's so easy to let yourself get swept away by this kind of, you know, global doom. So I don't know, I feel today I feel pretty okay today. Yesterday I wasn't that good, so this is good timing for this conversation. I mean, so I live in the UK, and I'm primarily a theatre writer, and the theatres in the UK have been so terribly badly affected. It's like, you know, like nothing we've ever seen before, because they've been closed since April. And so there has been no theatre, no live theatre at all since April. And there isn't going to be any until probably next April. Everybody's now very optimistic about the vaccine. And so there's already the talk about, you know, starting things up again slowly in April. But that means a whole year of no work for a lot of people, because the way that the British theatres are set up is that they rely a lot less on subsidies and a lot more on box office and commercial success. They also only employ a very small, a handful of people in administrative roles, and virtually all the actual theatre practitioners and theatre makers are always employed on a one contract basis. So everybody's been unemployed since April, and the amount of, you know, I think that your title is so accurate for our sector in this. It's not metaphorical. It's actual. This is an actual crisis for people's livelihoods. Many people's livelihoods, and the little bit of work that has been moved online, supported by the bigger institutions in the last year. So some of these sort of isolation projects and lockdown projects, they've literally served to help us maintain. Oh God, I'm sorry. To help us maintain a sense that that our identity is still here, because for a lot of people, you know, who are not writers, at least are able to originate work, and if nothing else, you write a diary from isolation. You know, like every writer in the world was writing some kind of lockdown diary, me included, right? But at least you can do that, and then you put it online, and then, like, you know, 5 people like it, and you feel like, oh well, you know, at least I'm still alive. But for a lot of other theatre practitioners who don't originate work, there's been nothing, and their identity has been literally erased. And recently, we've the Chancellor of the Exchequer in this country, who's effectively a finance minister, has said something along the lines that the situation is so hard and everybody needs to adapt, and so everybody should think about, you know, young people who are thinking about going into the arts should also think about retraining as something else. You know, which is a very interesting position, and I think a position that maybe many finance ministers would have liked to have said in the past, but nobody dared, and now we suddenly have a situation where they do dare to say it. And I think it shows, you know, 2 things. One, that in a crisis like this, art is suddenly treated as something non-essential. So, you know, so there's a kind of a sense, well, if there's a life-threatening global crisis, then maybe people who are wanting to be musicians or actors should go and retrain as, you know, nurses and paramedics, which is more essential than the arts. Whereas of course, that's a complete, you know, of course, arts are essential. And in fact, it would be a lot more useful if some of the brokers and hedge fund managers went to retrain as nurses and paramedics than writers and you know, and musicians. Because if it hadn't been for books and music and poetry and television and films, then you know, we would have had many more broken people come out of these lockdowns than we do have at the moment. But the second thing is also something I think even more sinister, is that I think the government that we have in this country is sort of traditionally not super interested in supporting the arts, or maybe they like to support like a nice, you know, Botticelli exhibition or a nice kind of, you know, Garsington opera maybe, but the kind of theater that exists, especially on the fringes in this country, so not in the big institutions that are about, you know, mainstream culture, but the fringes, which really is a very diverse and very, very vibrant community that really seeks to give voice to the underprivileged and to kind of empower disenfranchised. That's the kind of the part of the arts that I think is sort of treated as a bit of a nuisance. Not even maybe terribly dangerous, but definitely a nuisance. And so I think there's a sense of, why would we go out of our way to help them if all they do is sort of, you know, nag and criticize us? And to have something like this, like a kind of an act of God, that which literally puts us in a situation where you literally risk your life or your health to go and see a theater performance. This, I think, is a fantastic pretext, a fantastic justification to allow a whole sector to wilt and die. So I think we're in a situation of, you know, unprecedented danger, and I'm not really sure how we go about it. I agree with Vedrana. I don't think that the answer is, you know, on the internet, and especially now when the internet is so inundated with content that it's virtually, you know, impossible to choose anymore. So I don't know. I mean, that's that's my feeling at the moment.
Thank you so much, Tena. I'm going back to you, but now, Mario, do you want to say a couple of words as well? Because you are famous as an angry man.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, I would like to say a couple of words. Well, your invitation inspired this short video we saw at the beginning, and I was interested in the subject of involuntary home imprisonment, which is what is brought upon us during the lockdown, during February and March, and probably it is happening in some lighter version now. And also the question of mental health, which is, I think, very important issue now. At the moment, I'm directing with a theater group of blind and visually impaired people called Novi Život, New Life, the oldest group of such type in Europe. And we are doing, interestingly enough, Henrik Ibsen, Nora, Doll's House. So home imprisonment, in different terms, it's like something which is now going on. We are supposed to have premiere on December the 12th, but we are not sure, like Vedrana and her group, will it happen at all? If it happens, will it be for 25 people? How much are we allowed now? And to tell you the truth, I concentrate mostly this last couple of months on my family situation, which is regular family situation, but it is in these uncertain times. To tell you the truth, last more than half a year, I feel like Roberto Benigni in La Vita è Bella. I have two kids at home, 5 and 9 years old. If you remember from the movie, he was in a concentration camp with a kid, with his son, and trying to pretend that it's all a game. That's what I'm doing at the moment now with my kids as well. They're on online school, online kindergarten. All their trainings of sports and different out school activities have stopped. They're not going to drama classes, to chess or football games anymore. So at the moment, I'm trying to work on mine and their mental health. My wife is a nurse. She has 24-hour shifts in Vinogradska Sisters of Mercy Hospital here in Zagreb. So most of the time I'm alone with them. And that's my main preoccupation. I'm afraid that art in such form as art as a way of living is now, I thought I would never say it, on a second position in my life. Although I'm trying to do the best out of it. I wrote 2 books this year, which would have never been written if it was a normal situation. I would never have so much time to sit at home on laptop. I would be probably on either on some rehearsals or on some demonstrations or wherever. So we're trying to reverse it, trying to reverse bad situation, which is obviously influencing all of us, and trying to pull best out of it with hope to try and see what will be in the future. Also, what I sense through the internet, but not just through internet, also through the meeting with people, because we do go out, we meet people at the bars and cafes, not anymore from tomorrow, but we've been doing this last couple of months, and I can see a really strong divide, polarization of people on this corona subject. It's almost like you are either a conspiracy theorist or you're not. And the people can hardly control their emotions anymore. It's so much like we are watching this United States elections, what happened this month, and there was, oh, look at there, it's so polarized. But it's same here. Maybe we don't see each other face to face so many times. You mentioned that I work a lot as a musician, as a DJ, but I haven't had concerts since January, and I haven't DJ'd. Okay, I did had 2 like gigs on summer, but the only reason is because Croatian government so much depends on tourism. So it brings like quarter of BDP in Croatia is from tourism. So they allowed, like during the summer, of course, was it smart or not? I'm not going into it. I'm not a virologist or I'm not that good with everything. But it definitely influences us. It definitely influences theater, and I think that theater, out of all arts, is probably most in danger because we basically rely on direct connection. The theater, we can joke and say that for example, for movie editors, nothing has changed in this year. They're at the home and doing their editing on their laptops and computers for Corona. But we need audience. We need a live audience. We're needing it for more than 2,500 years. So how it will be infecting on our job, I'm not sure. At the moment, I think that the theater will become more intimate, that the playwrights, but also the actors and also the directors will be doing more intimate pieces. The spectacle, theater spectacle with many actors, with special effects, will probably have to be on hold for some time, and we'll see what good will come of it. Sometimes the ages of crisis are good for art, and maybe not for the performing art, since we're not allowed to have more than 25 people in audience now, but maybe some of playwrights, maybe some of the writers will manage to pull the best out of it. That's my opinion, my 5 cents.
Mm. Thank you, Mario. But just remember that after the Spanish flu, the world had the Roaring 20s.
Yeah, exactly.
Just don't.
Maybe we'll again have Roaring 20s. Yeah, it's.
It's although I don't know, times are different. Everything is different right now. Now I have to introduce another speaker. Actually, we'll start with her video art. That's Lela B, born in Ljubljana, and where she lives now. She's a philosopher and comparatist of literature, and she works as a self-employed professional in culture, which is frightening in this current situation. She conducts scientific research into the artistic avant-gardes and the contemporary art practices. And as a fiction writer, she produced mainly short stories, widely translated short stories. And also she was awarded with several awards. And now we have her autonomy, coexistence, criticism, her artistic video that is produced the way she produces her work these years as interdisciplinary art. Lela, could you please give us a couple of words in advance, or you prefer that I put the video and then we shortly comment it afterwards, as you wish.
Thank you, Sibila, for this introduction. I would just like to, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I would just like to put a remark on it because this video was prepared as a part of discussion for which you provided very good instructions. So it's not as much as an artistic video as it provides already some of my points of view.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I try to put it on right now, and then we talk a little bit more. Is it right?
Yes, please.
Yes. Again, I'm very slow in sharing. Something is happening with this video.
Let us start with a question. Who criticizes? Or even better, why does one criticize? But there is even a question before the question. Who is allowed to speak? It looks like dialogue is losing its space among people. It is opposed by a discrimination of speaker, by a lack of solidarity, by ultimative gestures and an undermining of consensus. Especially the different ones are not accepted as speakers. The re-establishing of antagonism between arguments is an ultimative act, as points of view and acts are recognized as those in favor and those against, without any degree in between, or without any development in time. The consensus is underestimated because, above all, there is a conflict instead of all together. Like the all together would be especially sleepy. To agree about the way of living is more and more tiresome process, as a number of different voices in society rises. With those voices, a possibility for different decisions arises. The decision on identity hardly takes last space, leaning on questions about who are we, what would we like to be, and who we can be. Precisely the fact that these questions are developing in time and can be rarely defined in a moment is an essence of living together. While living together, the answers are originating constructively for a community. During the search for the everlasting answers, the identity groups are paradoxically becoming stronger than the traditional communities, which are based on blood relations, common language, etc. People are not born into an identity group. They enter it by their own decision. It seems like the growing power of identity groups is simply a result of speed with which a society is changing, and these changes demand perpetually adaptation of an individual. So the individual needs to redefine hers or his own identity and reinvents her or himself as one goes along. It is possible to step from one identity group into another far more quickly than from one community into another. The speed of changes cuts into the intolerance. There is a domination of uncertainty in a relation to a different one. A life situation is far from being static. Therefore, radical behavior in drawing the boundaries is a frequent one. There exist the protected neighborhoods, the bombing of abortion clinics is occurring, we are facing the deportations of unwanted ethnic groups. Different communities define basic human values differently, but a global consensus exists that they represent needs which are based on human life functions and conditions for coexistence of humans. There are so many interpretations of coexistence as are many structures of communities. The Western world speaks in favor of assuring equal opportunities in the sphere of public life, while at the same time, in the sphere of private life, it speaks in favor of a differentiation of individuals. This dualism is the precise level of pending of contemporary criticism. The common goals of human society are rarely the subject of wide, persisting and deep dialogue. Therefore, not a majority of different individuals have a voice in it, when not all of them. This dystopia existed as so-called new normality even before the pandemic. When in utopia, the individuals would differentiate among themselves to the extent when coexistence would not be endangered. The way of coexistence would be defined by consensus, reached in dialogue. But in dystopia, the identities autonomously chosen by individuals are passivized, reduced, and even denied. As different ones, they need to take a period of silence or to remain silent in order that community would not banish them. They do not have opportunities to speak. They do not have space to speak. They do not have time to speak. The coexistence takes place without a consensus. So what is the role of critic in these circumstances? The individuals have recourse to seclusion, for they need to give themselves to their identities without respect to community. A self-isolation, working and schooling at home. Those are not phenomena created by pandemic. The attention of individuals while secluded goes to preserving autonomy rather than coexisting. From this point, a criticism regarding forms of coexistence pours into community, and because of lack of dialogue in the community, this criticism doesn't relate to global consensus. It affirms exclusively the contents which are passivized, reduced, or denied due to lack of dialogue. These contents are by this a lever, and aim of criticism is to put these contents into force at community level. Only when there would exist omnipresent dialogue, these contents could be an object of criticism. The art enables a special mode of criticism. In the field of letters, This is inside the identity group of individuals dedicated to literary work. Scenes of melting art with a discourse of art initiate an art process of exposing formerly not recognized forms at one side and narratively constitute communities at the other. A scene in this case is a figure defined by a contemporary philosophy as a fusion of sensual fabric of art and the ways of comprehending art. Consecutively, contemporary philosophy has defined an aesthetic regime as a positive affirmation of inability to reach objective reality. When understood in this way, the field of letters is not a form of escapism, but a form of distanced criticism. A distance, a difference, an otherwiseness. These are conditions for active contrast to be temporarily stopped. They enable those individuals who are different to not only participate in dialogue, but to initiate it. Not only to spread their voice outside the limits of an identity group with an aim to speak louder than the other voices. In this case, individuals are able to discuss with a reach outside the identity group for achieving consensus. The present discussion is one of such opportunities.
Hello, hello again. Thank you very much for your wonderful video. Would you like to comment further a little bit on it?
Perhaps just a bit. Of course, my video is concentrated on idioms and concepts, but regarding the debate which went already at this round table on actual circumstances in which we live and create, I would like to to say a few words about phenomena created by pandemic. As in the video I was talking about things which were not specifically created by pandemic. And in Republic Slovenia, this is certainly ongoing total ban of public gathering, which literally means that that you cannot talk with nobody outside your primary family circle when you are in the public space. So no gathering at all, not two people from different families or whatever. This is ongoing for 3 weeks, and perhaps it will take another 3 weeks to be in power. So as Tema and others said already, phone or video communication in this cannot replace face-to-face communication. And our work is really very much functionalized because you have to have a purpose to make a video call or to phone somebody in these times. It's hard to present concepts, hard to prove art as professional. It is hard to prove art as professional activity in business sense, because only business purposes are outside, are not under this total ban of public gathering. So it is very interesting to observe as that art becomes, of course, by these rules, but this regulation, something non-essential, which already Tena said. But also, if we go deeper into this phenomena, art is presented as redundant in society. But even deeper in this phenomena, art shows itself as something what cannot be defined, which is actually something affirmative, because it speaks in favor of autonomy of art. So this is my bringing together of this video with ongoing discussion at this round table.
Thank you so much, Lela. Now I'm going to present Teresa Cadete, Teresa Salemma. She is a full professor at the Faculty of Letters, Classical University of Lisbon, and she has been teaching and researching in the areas of cultural theory, history, interdisciplinary studies, German culture. She has published in several languages. Of course, she's from Portugal, but about topics of culture theory and history, interdisciplinary studies, and on topics on war and violence. And Teresa is a dear friend from PEN circles as well, so, which means that she's a writer and an activist. And Teresa is here to share with us some views on actually similar to what has been said before, but of course in her unique way, because she's a great essayist, and this philosophical artistic perspective of Lela and her essayism is right in the way, giving the chance to Teresa to speak uniquely the way she only does. So could you please tell us a couple of words that you have prepared on this topic? Are you here, Teresa?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
We can hear and see you.
Okay, hello everybody. Thanks again for being here. And I must say the situation in Portugal is similar. And I try to compensate by many mails, many phone calls with my colleagues and friends. But I'm translating the classics. It's a great relief in this for this pandemic situation. And I have prepared a small statement. I would like to read it to you. It's short, and it begins with questions, if I may. It happens that I mainly have questions, and today I have 3 questions regarding the situation which we live at the present. First, aren't art and literature always forms of resistance? Doesn't creation flourish in adversity under rough and tough conditions? Second, isn't life always a challenge that calls upon one's abilities to denounce unjust situations, to check the respect by governments for the rule of law, to provide individual imagination in order to fill gaps of communication, of interaction, of solidarity? Third, is this pandemic situation really unheimlich? That means uncanny in the sense that Sigmund Freud gave to this word. It means, do we need conspiracy theories in order to recognize correlations between violations of the environment and pandemic diseases, and to draw the correspondent consequences? Do we need to display the whole palette of abuses toward animal, vegetal, and mineral nature, such as practice of consumerism beyond basic needs, traveling beyond strict necessity? Well, this pandemic has already its history. The first month may have been felt by some of us like a welcome reflection pause, a breath flow in a slower course to rethink many hidden connections, but it did not last long. The voices of despaired people, of despaired friends who lost their jobs, soon became louder than the reasoning about changing one's lifestyles towards less consumerism and less traveling. In this sense, any appeal to frugality might sound arrogant if it does not go along with a most acute sense of solidarity, of defense of liberty of expression, of the rule of law. Here I have to ask whether sanitary rules and schedule restrictions, we have them for many months now, really threaten constitutional rights. I firmly don't think so. But this said, I sustain a close connection between accepting restrictions and claiming for more information by the authorities about the reasons for any kind of lockdown measures. Should using a mask and keeping distance not also be seen as a kind of respect towards others, rather than an outrage towards one's liberty? Should the principle of responsibility, according to the philosopher Hans Jonas, not be recalled? Has the human capacity to cooperate, to create, stopped with physical distance, with inhibition of hugs and handshakes? Well, maybe I care less about aesthetics in post-pandemic world than about the citizens' struggle for a better world. That means a more attentive, more careful, less predatory world. Let me stress, last but not least, we need less a Jesus, a new Jesus, than a new Homer. My signs of joy and hope come from telling stories. Politically, the priority is, in my opinion, to be attentive against the far-right virus within or outside governments. This is the biggest threat against our fragile democracies. Let us stick together in this struggle. Thank you and stay safe.
Thank you, Teresa, very much. I just wanted to mention one thing for Croatian listeners, that Nimrodov Luk translation from Teresa, in translation by Tanja Tarbuk and published in 2016 by Henacom, is still somewhere here available in the libraries, and you can find it and read it. So now I have previewed something different, conversation, but also reading from a quarantine poetry by two authors, one from Macedonia and another one from Croatia that you have seen already. You have seen Tomica Bajsić, but I'm going to introduce both of them right now, and then we'll see a short video. Martinovski is a poet, prose writer, essay writer, literary critic, translator. He works as an associate professor teaching on comparative poetics and comparative literature. And he is also in Association for Semiotic Studies and in European Network for Comparative Literary Studies. But what is more important, he is a great poet, short story writer, essayist, translator, and plays in different instruments. I'll start with a short video, the first by Vladimir, and then we can talk a little bit with him. He can read two poems in translation in English, and then we discuss the current situation with him and Tomica, after Tomica also reads a couple of poems from quarantine. So let me try again to share and to share the first video by Martinovski. Just a second. Just a second. Hi, Vladimir. Could you join us for a couple of words? Are you here? Where is Vladimir? I don't know what to do now. Where is Vladimir?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes.
So we've just heard you playing, and I have another video with a couple of your poems. Would you like to comment on the current situation before reading one of your poems in English?
Actually, I would like to thank you. I'm really very happy to take part at this panel and to exchange our views, ideas about the situation of art in general, of culture in this pandemic, and also hoping to see that it will be better in the post-pandemic world. Actually, I sent you a video because of playing music, because during these lockdowns I got back to music. So that was one of my messages, that staying at home sometimes can be productive, even though we are very scared. It's really unpredictable what will happen in the following months. We are all worried about our friends. We are all worried about the whole situation, because we all know that culture, and especially the performative arts, it was said before, they're really some kind of a first collateral damages in this situation. We are all looking forward to back to the world where art will be in our everyday life. So from the viewpoint of production, this year for me was extremely. I didn't expect that it will be so productive. So I would like to show you the poetry book which was published recently. Actually, the title is 101 sonet od jedna čudna prolet in Macedonian, or 101 sonnets from one strange spring. Actually, I was asked by a friend of mine to try to write a single poem in mid-April about my feelings about staying at home at the lockdown. And I was wondering what could be the form, poetic form suitable for this quarantine situation. And I have picked the sonnet form, maybe unconsciously, because the sonnet form was born in a very similar period at the early Renaissance, when there was a epidemic of plague all over Europe. And in that concise form, poets from the Renaissance period, they had this challenge, how to express your feelings, and this especially I can say this. I was pretty surprised that I've been using words from our let's say new vocabulary from this pandemic period. I never believed that I would write a poem titled quarantine poem, but that was actually the first poem from this poetry collection, and maybe I will read a couple of poems afterwards.
Yes. Shall I now put the reading in the original?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, I will. As usual, it takes me time.
Karantinska pesma. Слушај, сите потонале во зимски сон, цревата кркорат ко коњи што пасат, велосипедите се навалени ко пијаници задремани на маса. На лудашката се луда само оса, семафорот врти само за призраци, на болните тивко вечера им носат, пригушено во дует плачат близнаци. Слушај, само мачки шетаат слободно, кучињата не лаат, ко да ни се лути. Слушај, на црешата е доволно малку молк, за да се чуе како цути. Слушај, ластовиците се пак над нас. Баш и мегајле, што е полициски час. Песна со многу бројки и едно име. Нов ден во кој се пребројуваат жртви. Олку заразени, олку отпуштени, колку оздравени, а колку се мртви. Се бројат дури и колку се опуштени. Ги броиме земјите кои се пред колапс, смалените плати на спортските диви, парчињата од вчерашниот колач, неоткупените сливи од нечии ниви. Броиме денови од како сме дома, броиме дубари, баби, жаби, шифри. Се што ни собрало во нашиот стомак и додека се претвора во цифри кои есапат загуба, добивка, штета и вчера умрела нечија лаурета. Пророштва. Јоргованите ќе прецветаат, лалињата ќе се ничкосаат, цутовите ќе си одлетаат, мирисите ќе си витосаат. Кајсиите пак ќе родат, луѓето пак ќе ги јадат, и пак по шуми ќе одат, и пак лалиња ќе садат. И ќе се заборави пак оваа пропуштена пролет, оти пак не им доаѓа акл. Ќе изумат пак самолюбен полет, јоргованите брзо прецветуваат, цутовите уште побрзо одлетуваат.
Thank you, Vladimir. Would you like to read just one poem in English, because it was nice to hear Macedonian, but most of the other participants except me didn't understand the reading except the music of the words. So just one in English, if you please.
Yes, I will read a poem titled actually Shopping List, because during this pandemic year, actually the list of most frequent words were lockdown, were online, were distant learning, or social distance, or many other words. It's an endless list. But I would like to read a sonnet called Shopping List, which was written actually while I was thinking what to buy, because it was a lockdown weekend. Shopping list. Buy 2 loaves of peace, 3 or 4 jars of hope, 5 cans of calming bliss, 2 bars of laughing soap, a packet of frozen desire, a bottle of shooting syrup, a broom of sweep away fears, 5 boxes of breakfast cheer up, seeds to grow back our lost time, 3 bottles for a merry feast, a pair of shoes to catch the gist, 2 bags of mere sublime, 5 cubes of joyous yeast, and a notepad for a new list. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I would like Tomica Bajsić. Of course, you know him. He's a poet, prose writer, draftsman, graphic designer, translator, and he's a current president of the PEN Club, Croatian PEN Club. He has received several prizes and was translated into several languages. And of course, as every poet in this world, he is constantly in a quarantine, but this imposed quarantine is something else. So I'd like to ask Tomica to read 2 quarantine poems in English, if you can, because you have now the translation. I made the translation yesterday.
Thank you, Sibila, for your translations. They are wonderful, and I have one more also that I found that are poems that could be in the mood for what we were experienced today. But I would just like to say that we have placed for this event, that it's interesting to me, we have placed an ad on Facebook for this our status of engagement event, and then so to promote it, so to gather people who wanted to listen what we are saying here, but it was denied by Facebook because it could influence, because of this title. They said maybe it could influence on political opinions or influence or the voting process, or if we mention some socially sensible issues inside. So it was denied as an event. So it became that we are becoming subversive now in this environment, just with the title of this event that we speak about what we do in theater or in literature and anything. So that is very, very interesting to me. So I would read this poem about New Year. We took the sun as if it were an orange, and we locked up a nice day in the house. As every year, we watch movies. This time, we will open a bottle of Savannah South African wine, and so will some family in Cape Town, on the other side of the ocean, open a bottle of Croatian wine. We all look forward to the unknown. Watching the same movies, we travel together, locked in our rooms. The world is not what it seems. When I stopped writing with anything but an ordinary pencil, I don't know, I simply realized that there is nothing that cannot be erased, and that there is never just one, but more truth. And evidently, that there is no heaven on earth. Hell, on the contrary, has never left the world we live in. Power counts our steps, and the devil tailors suits. I will add just one prose poem because it speaks of something like of some unsurpassable distances that quietly faded away in time we live in. And today, I think we may be nearer than ever before, but also we are never more distant from each other. So it is an older poem. It's called Montparnasse 19. The painter took his sketchbook to the Jardin des Plantes in Paris for a meeting with a young woman from St. Petersburg. Soon after the wedding, her husband had departed to seek adventure in Africa and left her alone. The days in Paris were brief, but she spent a few days and nights of love in the Italian painter's apartment, who drew 14, to some say 16, drawings of her face and body. She took some of these works with her to Russia, and he threw a few drawings into the river as if they could set sail and seek her out. This was not to stop her from leaving, but an invitation back. Even if she wanted to return, she couldn't. The revolution in her country froze rivers and passages for a long time. An Italian painter in Paris died young from lung disease and wine. The young woman was Anna Akhmatova, the Russian poet, and the painter was Amedeo Modigliani.
Thank you, Tomica. I'm very content actually that Facebook didn't want to promote our event, which means that I was right when I put the title as I put it. But before I go into more detail with my views that are obviously not for Facebook, I'm going to ask Nadežda. Nadežda, are you still okay? Are you with us?
Yes, I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm quite relaxed. I'm sitting nicely.
Okay.
I'm sitting nicely. I'm listening to you.
I'm going to introduce you with a couple of titles from your books. Why read philosophers? Second one, A Guide to World Literature for Intelligent Women. And third one, Women and Philosophy. What is a woman philosopher doing right now in isolation?
Well, I can't complain. You know, philosophers are supposed to be good at crisis. They are supposed to formulate consolations. They are supposed to thrive on crisis, really. The funny thing is, as you remember in spring, a lot of my colleagues, very eminent, prominent, famous ones, were all very hopeful. They thought things are going to change, that now we have a crisis, that we are never going back to the old bad kinds of living. And unfortunately, I'm really sorry, but I think that the sad result of this half year is that things are not going to change. They're going to be the same, only worse. I'm really sorry to rain on the parade, but I really think that what's happening is a complete destruction on the communal, on the societal web. Now we have only those who are in power, and we have some ways of communicating as we do now. And I really think it's a clear and present danger for our way of life. I think that the power relationships are now so obvious. Those who decide and those who don't decide. Those who have the power to implement, to steer our lives. It's really, really, really worrying. Of course, I thought a bit about my contribution to the very interesting debate we have. And I thought maybe I should concentrate on a fact, on a theatrical fact, that probably when things get back to some kind of normality, that we will have an immense desire to have a live present theater, that if anything, then the future aesthetic will be one, it has been already mentioned, one of touch, of feeling, of here and now, that we are going to somehow undo the decades of living in a society of spectacle, of having everything mediated, that all that we live is all our experiences were somehow transformed, alienated, that we are going to try and really touch each other, or at least see each other. Touching seems to be now such a remote possibility that I don't even have to that I can't even imagine how it feels to touch things. But my general idea is really the sad one, that even this kind of crisis did not mobilize enough to see that we have something in common, that we should maybe there'll be some change in the way health services are organized. Maybe there will be a slight increase in respect paid to nurses and people who are really on the front line in this kind of battle. But unfortunately, I think that the destruction in these few months will really somehow undo the possible changes that we want to implement. So I'm really, it's not personal. As I said, my way of life isn't really changed. I don't have to perform. I'm sitting there to see, as I sit all my life, more or less. But I really am worried. I'm desperately worried for the state of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadežda. I hope that you are not tired or not too much tired. Mario had to leave us because he had some obligation. I know that you are all busy people, and I'm very, very glad that you still that you are still here with us. Of course, we are going back to a discussion after a while, but first we have to do our, as in dancing, everyone is going to do our little pas de bourrée. So I'm going to put the video with my angry speech for you, the one that provoked, that one that hopefully was not on Facebook, otherwise it would have been banned, I'm sure. So I'm trying to now to share the video with you, and after that we have a little bit more, and then we go into short summaries, ideas for the better future. Why not, if such a thing exists? So I'll try with the video. Just a second. Share.
In his critique of the neoliberal structure, Noam Chomsky said that nothing was being done because there's no profit in preventing a future catastrophe. In a time of global crisis caused by a pandemic, I could sharpen this thesis by asking, is there a profit in creating a catastrophe? I ask this question in the conditions of the rapid replacement of the globalist model of the world by a neo-corporatist new order. How to deal with the reduction of constitutional and democratic rights in a pandemic, and how to recognize the hidden political appetites for increasing state political repression and control of the population. Will any new ethics and aesthetics of engagement develop in the post-pandemic world? And more importantly, is engaged literature today engaged in the same way? What are the genres and forms, the audience, and the scope of such writing? What's the impact of such intellectual and, in a broader sense, artistic engagement on the people today? Recently, at a virtual literary festival, a panel leader asked me a question: can we afford art? It took time for people, debt slaves of predatory corporatism, to get to the point of losing the right to think critically. The global health crisis was just a trigger that showed that in a month and a half of a pandemic, the rich can get even richer, that they can actually become perversely rich, as Bernie Sanders says. To these people, this monetary elite of 0.1% of humanity, there's no interest in investing in the consciousness of debtors who don't have the right to critical thinking, don't need education, especially not artistic one. They must not be able to count without a calculator, just as Martin Bormann dreamed up in his Nazi vision of human society regarding the Untermensch class. Today, the debt slaves of neoliberalism must be convinced that they don't need art because it's too expensive for them to think critically. We are slaves to artificially created needs on which someone makes a lot of money. But can we still afford art today? We must evolutionarily be able to afford art because it teaches us to find creative solutions to problems. For example, prompted by a population explosion after World War II, John B. Calhoun decided to check what awaits us if the population continues to grow. He built a paradise for rats, Universe 25. Rodents have begun to become naturally extinct. The only thing that managed to stop the rat tragedy for a short time was to give creative tasks to these intelligent rodents. This shows the need for art in the time of Big Brother and artificially created desires for beautifully packaged products that actually destroy our health. Even the issue of human rights is no longer an issue that can be debated freely. Today, in the midst of so-called cancel culture, things seem to be absurd, undesirable, and negative social phenomena. People and topics are not analyzed, but simply with the help of the principle of blocking on social networks, problems are erased. A letter on justice and open debate signed this summer by 100 of intellectuals, including Noam Chomsky and Margaret Atwood, warns of the intolerance of opposing views, the fate of public humiliation and ostracism, and the tendency to discuss complex political issues from a position of moral security. Cancel culture has evolved from the immaturity of people, from the brainless narcissism fueled by social networks in which an undesirable phenomenon is treated as an evil individual. The dangerous naivety of the superficial blunt activism that prevails today foolishly implies that there's an easy solution to every problem. Just as an evil individual would be cancelled from the media, so an undesirable topic is just blocked. In my opinion, the saddest thing of all is that recent attempts at public disobedience around the world are immature and futile efforts that lack a true vision and goal. Some recent examples of what I call a mindless parody of the revolution inadvertently served the golden calf of neocorporatism, from deliberately fueling the low passions of the crowd in the Black Lives Matter movement to the moronic organizing of
trouble
across Europe. All of the above fits perfectly into the stage directing of the crisis. Event 201, a pandemic exercise held a month before the outbreak of COVID-19, was a multimedia event conducted at Hopkins University in collaboration with the World Economic Forum by including this time not only government and NGOs, but also the private sector and corporate representatives. Participants were representatives of NBC Universal or pharmaceutical and cosmetic industry giants like Johnson & Johnson. Back in the year 2019, the project manager of the event 201 said, let me quote, "Very few people have involved the private sector in pandemic preparedness, but it is in this sector that most resources are located. This is especially true when it comes to vaccine development." In the simulation, the CAPS virus, which is described as a cousin of SARS, but somewhat more transmissible like the flu, and somewhat more deadly, is presented as resistant to any existing vaccine. The scenario continues to develop as follows. Scientists are rapidly looking for a vaccine, but in the meantime, citizens have rebelled. That scenario is extremely realistic, said Dr. Eric Tonner from Hopkins University. We don't have a vaccine against SARS, MERS, or the various bird flu viruses that have emerged in the last decade. That's because vaccine development is slow and difficult if there is no immediate market for it, said Eric Tonner. In the simulation, the fictional coronavirus resulted in the deaths of 65 million people within 18 months, surpassing the deadliest pandemic in history, the 1918 Spanish flu. To date, 10 months since the outbreak of the pandemic, we have about 60 million infected and about 1.5 million of the dead. Let me go back to my starting question. Is there a profit in creating a catastrophe when there was no profit in disaster prevention? This time, take a look at recent artistic and performance interventions. Aesthetics in the pandemic world is necessarily the ethics of a new kind of engagement that goes from a quarantine diary to a street protest, and its main topic is how to bring the world into the media space of the post-pandemic world and how to fight for freedom of speech. We ask ourselves, what draws people out of isolation to the square? Are we witnessing the bloody return of old themes of class, racial, and gender struggle? The Moscow Metro asked police to investigate an incident involving pranksters who filmed a prank, hidden camera, about passengers' reactions to sick Asian people and people in protective suits. The coronavirus outbreak has triggered a wave of social experiments, as Russian bloggers like to call their prank videos. The pranksters, of course, caused controversy on the public sphere. Some people claimed the videos were a silly way to exploit an unfortunate situations, while others thought it was fun. Almost no one remembered to think about whether there was a message in the prank, an incentive for those who take everything for granted to finally start thinking. The pre-corporate web is gone, and the mechanisms of subversion have changed alongside the alternative culture styles and practices of engaging the audience in disrupting institutional and hegemonic orders. The paradox is in the fact that public perception of hacktivists still depends to a large extent on the news narrative constructed by news outlets owned by large media corporations. There are several strategies that attempt to minimize the effect of counter-hegemonic discourse, ranging from reappropriation of originally subversive ideas by mainstream media to labeling hacktivists as vandals and terrorists because they communicate with their public through staged disruption. Culture jammers of the post-truth times, those that resisted the financial lure of the world of viral marketing, are perceived as representatives of the toxic prank culture. But what is even more devastating, they could no longer count on the minimum of civic intelligence necessary for an average citizen to understand the prank. The biggest enemy of hacktivism is not the fact that internet is no longer as free as it used to be. We see it more in that feel-good deceitfulness related to the concept of infotainment promoted by mainstream media, but also by governmentally subsidized public TV services. Direct democracy, self-organization, cultural counter-projects in the post-industrial world, the impact of the counter-public sphere on the practice of democracy, these are some indicators of change. On the other hand, we have different symptomatology, non-political forms of networking, resulting in a myriad of groups concentrated solely and exclusively on issues of their primary interest. The concept of the unitary world, paradoxically, becomes elusive with greater online access to information. Our world, as Lippmann said, gets out of reach, out of sight, and out of mind. It is said that 3 times repeated lie becomes the truth. Then how come 100 times repeated inconvenient truth, by some miracle, never gets accepted as such in a society like ours?
Okay. Are you still here?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, yes.
Is it? Okay, I hope it was not too long. Now we can choose between 2 options because 2 colleagues are not with us, but I have videos by them. We could go right now into discussion or just a statement by each of you.
Actually, I would like
Nadežda?
to. Yeah, actually, I think we should discuss it a little bit because, I mean, your description of our situation, including everything that we already had as topics, I mean, it's getting serious, you know. We have an idea that we can have some subversive impact by doing what you, not me, do best, that is creating art. Which is, of course, true in the long term. But in the short term, I think that some really old-fashioned organization on a very clear and not subversive, the normal democratic procedures have suddenly shown that they have still a sort of revolutionary dimension. I mean, I think that now in our situation, we don't really have any kind of choice, but not only national, but internationally, to organize a sort of control, a democratic control in the usual way. I'm not going to, I'm an old-fashioned Marxist, and I'm not going to praise liberal democracy. But right now, I think it's an option. It's a tool. We don't really have anything else left. We have provocation, but we can't afford to be fragmented. We can't just keep up the alternative. We have to have an idea of organizing something. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. But what are anybody here who disagrees with Nadežda or has other proposition? What are we going to do? For example, Tena, what do you think?
I've muted myself. I mean, I think listening to everybody's contributions, I've had so many different observations. I think this possibly it's even a little it's almost too wide. You know, what are we going to do? There are so many sub themes in this that I think need closer attention. And for example, in your video, you know, I think we should absolutely have a special conversation about cancel culture. And I think this note that was just sort of humorously added to the event, that Facebook wouldn't advertise this event because of a couple of words and not really very controversial words at all. I think that's, I mean, I don't think it's funny. I think it's really shocking, and I think it merits a whole other conversation, you know, about it. And then many of the things that Nadežda said, I feel desperately worried as well. And I think it is shocking that there hasn't been a stronger reaction across the world. But I think that what worries me is that people can get very used to small lives. And, you know, it starts from this reaction of disbelief, but then the longer it goes on, actually, you sort of they tend to accept it. The level to which we accepted the extraordinary restrictions and are going back to it is really quite extraordinary. It's something that I didn't think could happen to us before, and now at this time when we are sort of seemingly so connected, it seems that actually we're not even polarized, we're just fragmented to a million different little tribes. And it seems that more worryingly than anything else, everybody has the right to their own facts. And I think that's something that really erodes the fabric of society. And I don't know how we claw back to a situation where that isn't the case anymore. And I think in the first instance, maybe what maybe these conversations like ours, although I don't know how many people are listening, but what we can do is somehow fight to keep at least a little bit of the public discourse layered and complex and sort of sophisticated, in the sense that many of the things that Teresa also talked about, that there is a way of taking a little of a lot of the arguments into one, and that they're not all desperately pitted against each other, that eventually just forms a completely unproductive stalemate.
Yeah, exactly. And Vedrana was giving me a sign that she wants to tell something, or I misunderstood your hand.
Well, no, it's not anything coherent really, but just listening to all of your work, and especially Sibila, what you read in the video, and now listening to Tena, I mean, I am actually completely shocked, because this is the first time since maybe the early 90s when I was a little girl that this sort of crisis happened, and I'm shocked at the level of passivity and acceptance that people are actually not doing anything. And I mean, we can talk about it in any term possible. I'm now, of course, talking every day with my colleagues concerning theater because it's so hard to work, yet we are still working because British theaters are obviously closed and German theaters are obviously closed. But I have seen my friends who are really quality professionals, artists, just stop earning money and not being able to live anymore. And it really scared me. And that we live in a society in the 21st century where people that are 20, 30, 40 years old can just lose their chance to eat and pay their rent. For me, that is very, very scary, and just the numbness of the political sector that is not replying to any of the mails, any of the protests. And you said something about violent protests in your video also. And of course, some don't work, some do work, but I'm just wondering, what can we do at this point? For me, just talking to people on the phone and saying letters and the Ministry of Culture and the send to certain theaters.
Vedrana, I can't hear you. Can everybody hear Vedrana? I can't hear you.
I don't think that
No, there's some
they
trouble.
think they actually deserve. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, for the last maybe
everybody hear me
15
now?
seconds or so, we couldn't hear you.
Okay, okay. I'll repeat myself. Okay, so everybody hears me now?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
No, I am so confused that I don't think that people don't think they deserve things. People don't think they obviously deserve to eat each month. I mean, this is highly confusing for me that institutions in Croatia, professional theaters that have been closed for months, people are still on their paychecks and they haven't lost 10% of their earnings. And yet people who are freelance professionals are really, they don't know what to do tomorrow. And they still they don't have, not the need, but they don't have the courage to revolt. So I'm really wondering, what is it that we need? Because it's not going to get, I mean, it can always get worse, but this is a pretty serious crisis. Just a concrete example. So we were working on this production, and my sound designer, Hrvoje Nikšić, from this let's say, post-rock band, Šumovi protiv valova, he's an amazing musician, and he works a lot for theater. And basically, he did all of this work for our show, which is just, it was amazing sound design. And he got corona, and it was really bad. I mean, I think he was like almost 2.5 weeks in bed with 39.5 Celsius. I mean, it was really, really bad. And I was just, we stopped everything because I wanted him to get better and work with us. And basically we had to do, we were searching for dates to have the premiere, and it was not sure if he could come because, like he's sick and he needs to be at home because it's his health. And I wrote to the Ministry of Culture, what are we going to do now? Because I need to take somebody else. Somebody else has to sit on rehearsals for me. And now the only way that I could pay another person is take the money, part of the money I was supposed to pay him, to another person. And of course, like, he's a father, he has a small child at home. And for me, this was just So, I mean, it was devastating, and I'm not sure what is the answer to this when the institutions who are supposed to protect those people literally from like being hungry are not protecting them. And I think there's a level of courage and revolt that we need to take in our own hands. Now is not the time anymore to say, I cannot say this because my career will be on the line, and I'm not a big player and my voice doesn't matter. I think it's really, really important now that we say and act on important things in every place that is possible for us to say it in. And like for me now, this is the only solution.
Yeah, Vedrana, I think that it's high time to do something like that. And I was also appalled by this dream culture because everybody is just waiting for somebody else to do something, and it's now the time to take to action. Because it's not going to get better, because it's actually scheme to get worse. That's why I ask you to join me here on this platform, which is not yet cancelled, but it still exists. Because somebody is not listening very well right now from the big censors. And it's benign, actually, as Tena said, it's very benign. It's not, there's no revolution in it. There's just common sense of how to get out of this horrible situation. Does somebody, is there any voice to join us now for concluding remarks? Before, the dramaturgy of the event was that we talk a little bit right now, as long as we can and as long as we feel. And then there are two more videos that I have to share with you. One I'm not going to put to the end because it's reading the story, just the first part I'll put. And the second one is by comic author Ivana Armanini, which is ideal for concluding this session of ours. Are somebody going to join us now for concluding remarks? Tomica?
Let me, yes?
Okay, it's you, tell me.
As the debate goes, I'm thinking of problems, troubles, obstacles, borders, lines, which pandemic has drawn more vividly than we were aware of them before. But so it would be interesting to think for a while while we don't have time to discuss it, where and how to draw the line. Which line others than us cannot cross, which line nobody may cross, and is there a dialogue beyond the line, so that dialogue is bringing us closer despite the line. So these are my remarks now, because I have to tell in an approximately 3/4 of an hour I will leave this discussion.
Okay,
so pardon me. Yes.
It was a very, very long discussion, and I'm really, really proud, as I told you before, that you are still here.
It was a great discussion, and I would like it to be even further, but obviously it's okay. It's okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So now I'm going to put two videos. The first half of the video by Marketa Hejkalova. She's an author from Prague, and she studied Finnish and Russian and has done a lot of translation as well. And she now lives with her husband in Prague and leads Hejkal Publishing House. But I know her from pen circles, and she's a very good author. The handicap of the video is that not the sound nor the video itself is technically good enough. But I could just say that Czech writer Marketa is a very, very interesting author that has also been translated in Serbian and Croatian, I think so. So you can find her work here as well. And after Marketa, the last video that we are going to see is by Ivana Armanini. Ivana Armanini is a comic artist and illustrator, but her work and her activities cannot be really divided from activism and social awareness. She is also an editor, curator, small publisher and graphic designer, and member of Croatian Freelance Artists Association, Women Who Draw platform, and Evoke, a community of optimists hosted by Melinda Gates. Ivana has 8 solo comic books, art books, and zines, and she's not with us here because she also, I think she has this anarchist stand towards round tables, but I hope that she's listening to us or that she's going to join us in action later. So first, it's a first part of Marketa's video, and then we go to Ivana Armanini, and then I go shortly back to you to conclude the evening. Just a second, as usual, I have technical skills which are not capacitated very well for new media. I share the first half of video by Marketa. Yes, share. Okay.
Hello, I'm Marketa Hejkalova, member of Czech PEN. We live in a very difficult time. In our country, bookshops, schools and libraries are closed, and on the other side, shopping malls are open till 11 p.m. and also shops where you can buy gun are open. What does it say about the values of the society? It's very difficult. We live under very strong control of our governments, and I think not only Czech but all other governments try to use the situation to control the citizen, to tell the people what they shall do and what they cannot do, what they shall think and what they cannot think. It's strongest till the times of communism, and it's unacceptable. But as president of PEN International, Jennifer Clement said in her excellent speech in the beginning of virtual PEN Congress this year, what can we do then? Write. We can do our job, and our job is writing. I think it's very important, not only in the times of plague, but in all other times, to write good, essential texts which tells something important about the life, about our lives, about our world. And as I am writer, I would like to read you a short story which I wrote in spring. It was the event organized by Czech Association of Writers to write stories which should encourage the people in the time of lockdown. Let me read my text. We're in the same boat. We are in the same boat, student Dan wrote as his first sentence. Nothing original about it. It was the phrase on everyone's lips. So he added a second sentence. Not only in the same boat, but we all share the same enormous safety net. He had in mind the social networks where he spent days on and during lockdown. He signed petitions, joined groups and shared information. He wanted to protect the world from the pandemic and maybe even more importantly from panic. But he had no idea how to. He didn't even manage to write an optimistic blog, only getting as far as the second sentence. It wasn't so much the world he wanted to protect as one of its inhabitants, his ex-girlfriend Simona. They'd broken up at the end of February. Simona wanted to leave for Italy on an Erasmus grant, and Dan didn't want her to go. After all, it must have been obvious to everyone that something was happening in Italy. You'll have to choose then. He'd been in a rash ultimatum. Either me or Italy. And Simona chose and left, ending up stuck in Milan. His first malicious reaction was serve her right. She's got what she wanted. But later he started to feel sorry for her. But most of all, he missed her. If she contacted him, he'd maybe go to the ends of the earth for her. But she had to take the first step. She had left. We're in the same boat. Dan's father Radim sat into the camera and smiled encouragingly. Radim had a counseling firm, but as he had no one to counsel under lockdown, he decided to make the most of the situation. He would give encouragement to people who followed him on the networks and acquire new clients in the process. So every day he made and posted motivational clips about how not only to survive lockdown, but also to use it for personal development, such as by studying business meditation. To this online course came at price of 4,990 crowns, including a lockdown discount. We're in the same boat, he continued. The boat is tossed about on and rough sea, and the helmsman is changing course every so often, while the captain is on the lockdown for China for days on end. He paused and pressed the stop button. He can't get bogged down in politics. His followers might include supporters of the government and the president. Besides, he hated the sea. The very thought of a seaside holiday made him queasy. He liked it best at his weekend cottage, but every night now he had a horrible dream that he wouldn't live to see the borders reopened and would never see the sea again. We are in the same boat. Dan's mother Marta repeated after the lowing radio announcer, but with an ironic grimace. She put her bags of shopping down on the floor and collapsed wearily onto a chair. She felt like making herself a coffee, but she had still had a lot of jobs to do. Responsibility was Marta's chief attribute. It was why she hadn't taken sick leave, and as her husband had advised her. If everyone did that, we might as well shut up shop, and we can't have that. Can we? She objected. She worked in a small supermarket. She responsibly sewed face masks. She herself responsibly mixed disinfection, and she responsibly brought home shopping for work so her husband and son didn't have to run necessary risks, seeing that weren't allowed out, unlike her. Occasionally she longed to give up on responsibility in favor of kindness, but that was easier said than done. If only they helped her out a bit, she'd immediately start to smile a bit more and frown a bit less. If only her husband cooked the dinner once in a while. If only her son picked her up at work in his car sometimes so she didn't have to lug the shopping on foot. At least she did have to visit her mom at the Alzheimer's Center. She wasn't allowed to, and anyway her mom wouldn't recognize her. Even so, Marta would wake up at night from a nightmare that she would never see her mom again. Those weren't the only times she was glad to have her two menfolk at home. We are in the same boat, Anna said consolingly and left. You can talk, Simona thought to herself miserably. Her American housemate was spending lockdown in the penthouse flat of her Italian boyfriend with a view of sea of Milan rooftops. We are all in the same boat, but Simona was shipwrecked. She should have stayed with Dan. If only he tried to make her stay at least, she immediately have gone back. But he hadn't tried, and there was no future for a relation based on ultimatums. Except here, she was now sitting shut up in a student residence in one of the most endangered cities of the world, and she had no idea how or when she would get home. She spent her days watching the terrifying news reports and phoning the consulate and embassy. "We'll let you know, stay in touch with the university management," was the answer she received each time. She'd love to be in touch with anyone at all, but the student residence was almost deserted by now. Those who could had gone home or to their Italian lover. Simona missed Dan dreadfully. For several days now she had been making up her mind to call him. She wouldn't admit straight away that she had made a mistake. She'd pretend it was a casual call, or maybe even she'd called him by mistake. The silence of the empty corridors was suddenly broken by her telephone ringing. "Dan!" she blurted out rapturously, as if land had finally appeared on the horizon in front of her stranded boat. So that's all. I had to add that this story was translated from.
Hello, I'm Marketa Hejkalova.
Okay. Thanks to Marketa for the reading of the story, which is actually, yeah, we are in the same boat and the boat is sinking in a way, which is an intro to Ivana Armanini. I have made a small movie from some of her works, and I hope that you are going to enjoy it. Just a second. The title is Dear COVID. Yes, here we are again. I think that we have somehow survived together through this long evening, and thank you so much for being here, for discussing these very, very important matters with me. I hope that we can also take it to some action later. Are there some concluding thoughts, suggestions for the future, optimistic ideas?
Teresa,
are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Perhaps I sounded too optimistic, but I must stress we have a socialist government, and I trust our prime minister, because we had before a right-wing government. It was awful. Well, this first. Second, I remain very critical, but I see the threats from the far right, and most of all coming threatening Europe. The European Union. It is our house, our home, if you want it or not. And I see the threats coming from Poland and from Hungary. And I must say I am pretty worried. And and I support the colleagues and friends who play theater. I go once in a week to the theater with a mask, and they have half of the seats occupied. Well, it's okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
It's okay. Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
And as you have noticed, I'm an ecologist, and this is also my position. And I read everything, also conspiracy theories. I read everything, but I'm cautious with judgments, because really I don't know, and I'm not a scientist. And I trust the scientists, and I'm very skeptical towards vaccines. And I don't want to be vaccinated. I live carefully. I live health. I have a health living, and it's enough. And I'm always solidary with people who have less, and who have nothing, and who have lost more than I have lost, because, well, I I have my salary at the end of month. And thank you for being here, together. And I'm happy. I'm willing to support every initiative against unjust situations. Thank you, Sibila.
Thank you, Teresa.
Okay.
There are some other voices.
I'd like to say I enjoyed whatever we are talking about. It's a grim story, but I enjoyed being with you. So it's it's a nice evening. Of course, I mean, the very idea that we are still together, that we can talk, it means that we are not all that fragmented, that there is still some kind of connection, solidarity. I say, as I really believe in action, all kinds of actions. So let's go on. Bye.
Okay, so we are concluding this, and maybe Tomica just concluding, could give us the concluding words of Croatian PEN, because Croatian PEN hosted this beautiful event. So bye-bye all. Tomica is now concluding officially our evening.
Thank you for being all here. I'm sure for myself, I have learned a lot this evening, and I will think about what I have heard, of course, in next days. And I would like to add what Marketa mentioned regarding the International PEN and the Congress, that in the background of this grim situation that we live in, that's also there is some aesthetics of engagement that are happening in Belarus, for example, that our colleagues from Belarus PEN are persecuted, even in prison. There are 1,000 people in prison in Belarus, and it's for 1 month this, because they want to have a free democracy choice. And of course, Hong Kong, that we have heard for last year from them, their autonomy and everything, which is at stake for them. So like that is the way they are preserving their rights and trying to hold on to their liberty, to their lives. It's something that needs our solidarity, of course, needs our help in any way and everywhere. We have heard a lot from Nicaragua, from everywhere. So like it's happening a lot, and more International PEN is involved. How it can be involved in those cases, of course, and also all the imprisoned writers from Turkey to African countries. There is a raging war in Eritrea. We will have soon we will have one panel where there will be a friend, colleague from Eritrea. He will tell us about it and so on. So that is something that that is that was in PEN this last month. And thank you again. Thank you, Sibila, for staging this event. It passed very quickly, but it was very nice to hear. And thank you to be so patient. Vladimir, you in Macedonia, of course, and Tena from London, and Vedrana and Teresa from Lisbon. So I hope that we will see you again, either on a Zoom or somewhere in life, in real life. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.